Missouri's Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, now joins us on KCMO. He is obviously part of this lawsuit. So, Mr. Attorney General, good morning. How about this? There's not much that's bipartisan. This is across the country. What does that say about the issue?
Well, I think everyone can agree that big tech shouldn't get rich by hurting our children, and yet that's exactly what they've done time and time again. They've designed these platforms to make them addicted to children. They've hidden some of the features from parents that parents might want to know about that could potentially harm their kids. It's resulted in mental health issues, physical health issues when kids get addicted. And, surprise, surprise, too much screen time is a bad thing. And so we're fighting back using Missouri's consumer protection laws and federal child protection laws to put a stop to it.
What is the end game, though? I mean, is there really an end game for the states, or is it part of pressuring the feds and Congress to do something on this front?
Well, I think it has to be an all-hands-on-deck approach, absolutely. But the end game in this lawsuit is a consent judgment. They can change what they're doing. They can change their business practices to stop being predatory towards children, put some guardrails in place, and alert parents to some of the dangerous features. And if they did that, then that would likely bring them back into compliance with the law. But right now what they're doing is they're purposely targeting children. They've purposely designed a product to make it addictive to children, and they've hidden and concealed the negative mental and physical health risks. So I think Congress does have a role to play long term. I think that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act has been misinterpreted by the courts, and it's become an economic boom for these big tech corporations. It's a government-regulated monopoly at this point. That's not healthy for consumers.
I agree wholeheartedly. There will be some on the Republican side of the aisle who will maybe take a libertarian stance of saying, well, that's on me. That's up to me as the parent to decide if my kid is doing something that's inappropriate or doing something that is addictive. That's on me. What would you say to those maybe more libertarian-leaning Republicans who actually might disagree with you on this?
If the company's lying to you, how do you know? How could you ever make that determination? I agree. Parents should be making determinations, but they have to have sufficient information upon which to make decisions. And libertarians would agree with me that when you have a government-controlled that the facts are concealed because the open market competition doesn't bring the best to the surface, doesn't bring the best products out for the consumers.
Mm-hmm. Andrew Bailey, Missouri's Attorney General, is on KCMO Talk Radio. So what do you think? I mean, when it comes, you've got young children, I believe. So what do you think should be done by these social media companies? Should there be also maybe a federal ban like smoking where you can't use it if you're under, whatever age, or drinking, things like that? What do you think the end game should be, just personally?
Well, personally, I think that we've got to get information into the public domain that can provide some texture and contour to the physical and mental health negative consequences from too much screen time. Let's study this and understand how it's impacting our children. It took decades for us to have an actual full-fledged understanding of how certain other products were negatively impacting youth and adults, but we need to understand that in this marketplace as well. And then I do think that the company needs to change the way it does business. I think that at the end of the day, there needs to be parental warnings on the products. I think they need to stop doing so many pop-ups and designing algorithms in order to addict children and make it to where they crave that screen time. And I think that those are some short-term solutions to the problem.
Now, in terms of the screen time, I think that's one part of it. To me, the more concerning part might be the fact that what they're doing with that screen time, and you've got studies that show 14% of teen girls say Instagram makes thoughts of suicide worse, 17% of teen girls saying it makes eating disorders worse. So how much of it is about those apps themselves and what they get fed on those apps versus just screen time on an iPhone, an iPad, or a TV?
Well, it's the apps themselves, absolutely. And I do think that as a broad principle, too much screen time is a bad thing. But I also think that it's not only that we're on the screens, it's what we're looking at on the screens, like you said, and those apps that target kids and expose them to things that the parents don't know about or conceal from the parents that they're being exposed to that maybe aren't consistent with the parents' values. Look, in the transgender investigation into the clinic, pediatric transgender clinic in St. Louis, what we uncovered was that, pursuant to sworn affidavit, overwhelming majority of the children that came into the clinic with quote-unquote gender dysphoria, in other words, were confused about their gender, stated that they learned about their gender or became confused about their gender because of big tech social media, because of the time they spent online. And so, look, there is absolutely a mental health crisis in America amongst children as a result of big tech social media. And the companies need to reform their behavior in order to, again, warn the parents, protect the kids.
So you guys are hoping you put pressure on them, obviously, and get them to do the right thing. And if not, then it might require congressional involvement. Is that a fair way to put it in terms of what this looks like going forward?
Yeah, and I think you could do both. I mean, look at what Senator Eric Schmidt has proposed, and I know this relates more to our First Amendment suit, which, by the way, is going to the United States Supreme Court, but yet another example of how we can demonstrate big tech doesn't have our best interests at heart when they're being coerced and colluding with federal officials to suppress our free speech in violation of the First Amendment. But look at what Senator Schmidt has proposed, which is to allow for a cause of action that would defund government officials who are using big tech to violate our constitutional rights. I mean, that's one avenue of approach. There's so many others. I know that we've looked at repeal and amendment of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, and it's the long term. I think that's something that we need to give a hard look at and figure out where the best policy position is. The monopoly is not serving the best interests of the customers at this point. And this lawsuit is yet one more example of that.
What is? I know that the Supreme Court is, as you just noted, hearing your First Amendment case against the president. What is that exactly? Why does that matter to Missourians?
Well, it's all about protecting our right to free speech. This lawsuit, Missouri v. Biden, has uncovered a relationship of coercion and collusion from the White House across a spectrum of ages to silence American voices on big tech. You remember when those censorship algorithms changed around COVID and all of a sudden people were getting booted off big tech and weren't being able to communicate with their friends and family anymore, or were being shadow banned or de-emphasized? That was being done at the demand of federal officials. We've got 20,000 pages of documents, numerous depositions. We took all that evidence to court. We asked the judge to build a wall of separation between tech and state. The first brick in that wall was laid on July 4th in celebration of this nation's independence when the court granted a nationwide injunction to put a stop to Biden's violation of our First Amendment. The Department of Justice is committed to silencing any voice in dissent, so they've appealed the case twice. We've won twice at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, so the score is Missouri 3, Biden 0 in the fight to defend our right to free speech.
Well, we will be following that, Mr. Attorney General. We appreciate the time, and we'll be keeping tabs on this. Thanks for being here on KCMO.
Hey, thanks, Pete. All the best to you and your listeners.
You as well. That is the Attorney General for the state of Missouri, Andrew Bailey, on KCMO Talk Radio.